Welcome to ASR Science Institute. This is our website asr.com. On this we upload daily current affairs and also monthly compilations are uploaded. So for the month of July, in this video we'll discuss the full news compilation. We'll try to cover one part of it. So you can download the full news PDF from here. So from starting with the culture, we'll start the discussion. Both English and Hindi discussion would be difficult, so I'll be doing it only in English. Otherwise, we can't finish all the months by May. So this is culture. The first news is Khasis lived in Meghalaya since 1200 BC, says study. So Khasi tribe. So in Meghalaya, you should know there are 3 significant tribes and also 3 significant hills in that order. Khasi, Garo, Khasi and Jaintias. Jaintias also called Nars. So these are prehistoric megalithic tribes. So megaliths is also a term for the tools. These megaliths, they were, mega means big, lith means stones, so big stones. So megaliths were also known for their burial sites and where they put these big stones, just like tombstones we can say. So this Khasi tribe was also prehistoric megaliths and tools have been discovered here. So showing the antiquity of this site, this tribe. So tribes of Meghalaya, one significant aspect of them is that they follow matrilineal lineage. So from the mother's side, so whereby a property's inheritance is traced through the woman. So this is one significant feature of Meghalaya tribes. So you can see Meghalaya, the northeastern state. You can see the districts here shown. So you can see these are the Garo hills, then Khasi hills, and then the Jaintia hills shown here. So you should know from geography perspective too and from tribal culture perspective too. The next is India basks in glow of UNESCO honors. So new heritage sites have been designated, means these have become World Heritage Sites under UNESCO now in July 2016. So now India has 35 sites. So out of the 4 new which have been listed, 3 new which have been listed are Kanchenjunga National Park in Sikkim, Nalanda University in Bihar, Capital Complex in Chandigarh. So these are the 3 new sites. So first time it says that any country has got 3 sites inscribed in a single session. So this is the fact. Kanchenjunga National Park has been designated as the first mixed heritage site from India. Mixed heritage site means it is both natural and of cultural significance. So that is Kanchenjunga National Park. It is the world's third highest peak, Mount Kanchenjunga. So it has religious and cultural practices of Buddhism linked to it. So it covers 25% of Sikkim too. Second is Nalanda University, Nalanda Mahavira, so that we know it is in Nalanda, Bihar. And Capital Complex in Chandigarh, you should know it was designed by French architect Le Corbusier. So it has the Legislative Assembly, the Secretariat and the High Court. So both legislature, executive and judiciary buildings are up here, designed by this French architect Le Corbusier in 1950s. The next is transporting a magnificent edifice back to the 17th century. So this is Qutub Shahi dynasty ruler Muhammad Quli Qutub Shah. This was the 5th king of this dynasty, the founder of Hyderabad. He had built his own tomb when he was alive, as was done earlier too. Presently, what has happened is his tomb here was intervened through modern work. So this actually resulted in damaging the original construction. So the stucco plaster which was used on it, on the roof, and it has resulted in spoiling the actual architectural features rather than preserving it. So this was one point in which it was in use in Hyderabad. The next, in geography, we have the first news. In a first, natural gas hydrates discovered in the Indian Ocean. So natural gas hydrate, this is an icy form of the fuel as such. So this gas hydrates, generally they contain methane. So this natural gas discovery has been made in Indian Ocean after a joint expedition which was undertaken by India and USA. So this has been opening up a new resource now to meet our energy requirements. So this was a gas hydrate field venture, the most comprehensive as such done till date by scientists from India, Japan and USA involved. So this you can see gas hydrates are discovered are located in coarse-grained and sand-rich depositional systems in Krishna Godavari basin. So in that region they have been discovered. So you can see solid ice-like form of water that contains gas molecules in molecular cavities. So in nature, this gas is mostly methane. So these are natural gas hydrates. So they can be extracted and then be used. Of course, the feasibility would also be seen, but they have been discovered presently in this expedition. Then next is in polity. Government Congress inched closer on GST bill. So GST bill developments have taken place a lot since then, but then it is in news. So there were three main points of contention then raised. One was cap on the GST rate, that what would be the maximum GST rate as such. So we have already seen now, you should know it is 28%, which has been announced in the 4 slabs. But then the law legislation allows it to go up to 40%. So provision has been made for that. So that was the one point on which opposition was demanding, that there should be a cap. It should not be free, open, that whatever be the amount, it can be put on GST, can be charged. So cap on GST, but it has been too high now, 40%. And that too 40% means 40% as central GST, 40% as state GST. So it can go very high. So this was regarding the constitutional amendment bill, which was being discussed and negotiated and finally has been passed, the GST Act. So this wanted to, under this, the opposition wanted to set up a dispute resolution mechanism. So that was also a point. Then the bills, one of the bill's contentious provision was a 1% additional tax levy by manufacturing states. So this was removed now. So manufacturing states, as we have seen, that they would suffer. So this 1% additional tax levy was proposed, but this has been removed. So this is not there anymore, and 100% compensation to states for 5 years has been assured. This bill has also been passed in the legislature. Then the next news item is Land Bill panel gets 7th extension, new chief. So this is regarding the land bill, or as the full name is, Right to Fair Compensation and Transparency in Land Acquisition, Rehabilitation and Resettlement Amendment Bill. So this is a bill of 2015. It has been referred to a joint committee as such. So it has got the 7th extension and a new chairman now, this committee as such, keeping the bill alive. So it's nearly a year after Prime Minister Narendra Modi withdrew the ordinance, because earlier ordinance route was used to have these provisions which are presently under the amendment bill kept alive. So now, of course, the Prime Minister had also said that since the bill is not being passed because of opposition, of course, in the Rajya Sabha, so the Prime Minister said that the states should enact their own laws on land acquisition. So this was a statement given as such. So ordinances were issued before this 4 times, but you can't keep on promulgating ordinances. So the government gave up the ordinance route to finally. So this was the statutory order that the ordinance route. After the ordinance route, they gave a statutory order to include 13 central acts like National Highway, Railways Acts to extend benefits to those whose land is acquired under the land law. So this statutory provision has also been provided that these people would also be getting benefits when land is acquired. Then Land Acquisition Act of 2013, which is proposed to be amended by this 2015 bill, this had exempted these 13 acts from the purview. So they would be, but then it was said within the act also that they would brought within the ambit within 1 year. So that is what has been done on the same lines. The ordinances which had been proposed, you will have to see the details about them too. So that contentious provision in then was that they were removing the consent clause for acquiring land for 5 areas. So these are industrial corridors, PPP projects, public-private partnership projects, rural infrastructure, affordable housing and defense. So means consent clause means that minimum consent has to be taken. So you can see that 70% consent has to be taken from owners. At least 70% should agree. But then this consent clause has been removed for these 5 purposes. So this was the ordinance which was proposed. So now it is provision in the bill, and the bill is not being passed because of opposition. So that is why this was done, because otherwise the projects get delayed. So the Land Acquisition Act's main purpose was that it should allow for compensation, assuring compensation, rehabilitation, resettlement to the people who lose their land during land acquisition. So you can see the 2013 Act's provisions. It requires 80% of landowners in acquisition of private and public-private partnership projects. So at least 80% of landowners should give their consent. So this was the requirement. This is not required now under this ordinance and the bill also. for national security, defense, rural infrastructure, industrial corridors, social infrastructure. So these were the ordinances which were proposed. Then social impact assessment was required for every acquisition. So this again is not required for these categories. Then multi-crop and fertile land can be acquired only in extreme circumstances. So here it can be acquired for again those categories. Multi-crop, fertile land can also be acquired. And compensation will be 4 times the market price for rural and double for urban areas. So urban land compensation rates have been decided. So this remains unchanged as such. Then the next news is consensus reached on afforestation fund bill. So this is regarding the compensatory afforestation fund bill, which is required for disbursement of around 42,000 crores to the states for afforestation purposes. So this has a long history. Finally, a bill has been finalized. So there are amendments which have been proposed by Congress under Mr. Jairam Ramesh. He has proposed amendments to the bill that would ensure that afforestation activities would be undertaken only after making sure that the land did not belong to tribals or forest dwellers. Otherwise, these companies, because afforestation means compensatory afforestation, means when companies take up forest land for developmental industrial purposes, they should provide for afforestation also. So this afforestation should not be on land which belongs to tribals or forest dwellers. So ensuring that, so these people are actually eligible under the Forest Rights Act on that land. They have the rights on that land, forest land. So that's why this safeguard should be there, was an amendment proposed to this bill. So this is regarding compensatory afforestation fund bill. So the principal objective is to set up this national compensatory afforestation fund and state compensatory afforestation fund. So funds are already, thus collection is being done. So this is being done means the companies which are undertaking forest land, they have to make compensation, means they make a contribution to this fund to provide for afforestation. So you can see any user agency which diverts forest land for non-forest purpose is required to disperse it prescribed amount. So that amount is in this fund. This fund is already there. So the money is there. Bill is required for having the regulations. How should this be done? This was on the Supreme Court intervention that this provision was made. So this 90% of the collected payments will go to states and 10% will go to national government as such. So that is there. Then also what will it be used for? So it will be used for increasing forest cover, forest regeneration, and even the government presently has proposed that wildlife protection would also be one aspect on which this can be used, and related activities to protect green cover. So the use of these funds would be for these purposes. Also, it will set up national management and planning authority at the center and state level authorities also. So this is there. So compensatory afforestation fund management and planning authority. So this is an ad hoc body which has presently been set up. It's called CAMPA. So that has been set up, but then a law is required to have the institutional mechanism in place. Then the next news item is Lok Sabha gives nod for Lokpal Act's amendment. So this is Lokpal and Lokayukta Act of 2013. So this amendment to it which has been proposed has been approved by Lok Sabha only. Rajya Sabha has not approved it, and till presently also in March 2017 too we discussed this amendment bill, Lokpal and Lokayukta amendment. So in this provision has also been made for extension of the timeline which has been given to public servants, trustees and board members of NGOs receiving government funds more than 1 crore or foreign funding of more than 10 lakh. They have to declare their assets and also those of their spouses and dependents. So this provision is there in the Act of 2013. So the section 44 mentions of it, and it gives the July 31 as the deadline. It came into effect from 2014. So this has been extended again and again, and now again this deadline has been extended further in this amendment. So this has still not been put into effect. Then in judiciary, the first news is Supreme Court removes barriers for disabled in government services. So this is about disabled persons. The judiciary says that it's the state's obligation to provide them at least 3% reservation in public sector jobs. So this is the provision under Persons with Disabilities Equal Opportunity Protection of Rights and Full Participation Act of 1995. So government has to provide this, and government finds ways to avoid this, that they don't have the requisite people with the capabilities for this reservation, which is there in public sector jobs, 3% reservation for disabled. So now the government is making it clear that it's the obligation of the government to make sure this is done. Then regarding judicial vacancies and judicial appointments, memorandum of procedure. So MOP, which provides for, which has been, provided for. So this has given the government the right to reject. So we have already discussed this. This is July news. So presently the government has also given back this, the judiciary has given back the MOP to the government, in which it has stated that the government will have the right to reject, but if on the basis of national security, such aspects. But then if the judiciary gives back those same names again for recommendation, then they have to make the appointments. So right to reject once is being provided. So we'll have to see what would be the government's response now on this as of April 2017. So this is that time's news. So judicial vacancies are quite high. There are over 45% of the positions of High Court judges are vacant. So this delay in judicial appointments was the issue because MOP was not being finalized, and through the collegium system, government was not going ahead and making appointments expeditiously. So this was the logjam which we saw post the National Judicial Appointments Commissions Act. So NJAC Act and the 99th Constitutional Amendment Act, which made provisions for this, was struck down by the Supreme Court in October 2015, means a year before this too. So this because it said that in the appointment of judges, the government and the judiciary cannot have equal role and judicial precedence cannot be taken. It would affect judicial independence. So this was the case. Since then, MOP has been proposed because judiciary at that time said that the present collegium system which is functioning is also not up to the mark. So NJAC will also not do, but we can go ahead with an MOP, a memorandum of procedure of deciding how appointments can be further reformed, judicial appointments. And regarding the clause on right to reject, which is there, a recommendation on grounds of national security. So on ground of national security, the government would have the right to reject a name which has been suggested by the collegium. So under the current practice, government is bound to accept the recommendation by the collegium if the recommendation is sent again. So this has still been kept as such by the Supreme Court in March 2017 when it returned the draft MOP. Then next is government bats for big diesel cars, tells Supreme Court that they pollute less. So in Delhi, we are seeing especially that diesel cars are being banned. So government has now said, central government said that big and high-end diesel cars have better emission norms and they pollute less than the commoner small cars. So the blanket ban which has been put on fresh registration of diesel luxury cars and SUVs with over 2000 cc engine capacity in Delhi, this should be relooked into. So that's what the government's viewpoint is. It says that if the 7th month ban based on the December 2015 order of the Supreme Court continues, then global car makers would leave the country for greener pastures. So this will affect jobs and FDI in the country. So this is the central government's viewpoint before the Supreme Court, that let them function. So government also challenged the Supreme Court's authority to impose a cess when taxation comes in the domain of the government. So cess which has been proposed on these polluting cars, pollution cess, anti-pollution cess or environmental compensation charge which it is asking for. So that is also being challenged, that you don't have the domain. And Supreme Court has appointed this Environment Pollution Control Authority. So this authority has advised the courts against the car makers' proposal that they should be paying 1% of the car showrooms towards combating pollution. So this had come from this body's advice. Then next is, if you don't like a book, throw it away, says Supreme Court. So this is regarding censorship. So Madras High Court upheld freedom of expression and refused to ban this book, Madho Rubagan. So this is a book by Perumal Murugan. So it is being protested against by kangaroo courts. So kangaroo courts are katta panchayat. So these are courts, public courts as such, which are set up, which are not legal of course, and they pass verdicts here and call for bans and actions against individuals as such. So this is a book which has been protested against. Its English translation means Mathorubagan, means one part woman. So this was written by Perumal Murugan in 2012. So it talks of a custom which is there in this villages in Tamil Nadu. So they are a low caste couple in the story who in the early 20th century. So they get involved in this custom of consensual impregnation. So the woman, she cannot conceive. So she goes ahead for this custom in which the temple uh, festival is held, in which men, on behalf of the giving a blessing of a child on behalf of the god as such, they have this sex as such, sexual intercourse, which will result consensual sexual intercourse with an unknown man, so that the woman gets blessed with a child. So this is a custom which was going on, which was discussed in the novel, and that is the point on which the whole controversy arose. So that is what the Madras High Court is saying, that if you don't like a book, throw it away. You're not forced to read it or anything, but that is the point. Then the next news item is Supreme Court sets deadline for blocking online sex selection ads. So this issue is still going on, that the Supreme Court is asking internet search companies like Google, Yahoo and Microsoft to neither advertise prenatal sex selection advertisements nor sponsor. So they should not come in searches also, is what the Supreme Court wants. And Supreme Court even asked them whether it is possible to even remove them from the listings as such. But that is not possible. So the companies, it was said that they were given 1 year's time, but still they have not fulfilled this order of the Supreme Court. So they say it is violation of Section 22 of Preconception and Prenatal Diagnostic Techniques, Prohibition of Sex Selection Act of 1994. So such advertisements cannot take place. But the companies, these search engine companies, say that it is, we are putting in our resources. So they are trying to block such advertisements, but then there are loopholes and they do come up. So Supreme Court is asking them to be stricter. So that is what it says, that you build your in-house system to make sure that such advertisements do not come up in searches. Then next is Supreme Court ends impunity for armed forces. So this is an important news item. So this is with respect to AFSPA, Armed Forces Special Powers Act, which is in force in various states, including in Manipur. So here the Supreme Court has now held that every death which is caused by the armed forces in disturbed area, whether the victim is a dreaded criminal or a militant or a terrorist or an insurgent, it should be thoroughly inquired into. So that is the point, that you don't have immunity completely about having a right to kill as such, as is provided under AFSPA. So this is an important ruling. So this was a plea coming from hundreds of families in the northeastern state of Manipur for a probe by a special investigation team in around 1,528 cases of alleged fake encounters involving the army and the police. So this AFSPA Act of 1958 is in force here. So the government's argument is that lack of immunity from prosecution. If they are not having this immunity, then they would it would have a demoralizing impact on the security forces. So the government's argument was countered by the Supreme Court that at least spare a thought for the equally unsettling and demoralizing picture of the citizens living under the fear of the gun in a democracy. So this is an important point raised by the Supreme Court now finally. So it has said that you have a right to shoot, okay, but then a thorough inquiry should be conducted into the encounter killings in disturbed areas, because the alleged enemy is also a citizen of our country entitled to all the fundamental rights, including Article 21, right to life under the Constitution. So this is a ruling coming forth now. So you can see it is there to tackle insurgency. So in Northeast, in 1990, it was approved for Jammu and Kashmir in these regions too. Then in 2001, it was extended to further districts in Jammu and Kashmir also. So what is the contentious provisions of this AFSPA Act are section 4 and 7. So this gives legal safeguards to forces for undertaking counter-terror operations. So they can search premises and make arrests without warrant. They can use force. It's in quotes. It's a statement mentioned in this section 4. They can use force even to the extent of causing death, destroy arms, dumps, hideouts, and stop, search, and seize any vehicle. So this is the power given to them. So apart from power, then inquiry is also essential about how and when the action was taken. So that is what the Supreme Court is emphasizing on. Next is Supreme Court seeks review of laws on advocates. So this is after the alleged violence by lawyers in Delhi and Chennai. There are strikes undertaken by lawyers as such in different parts of the country. And presently in March 2017, we have also discussed the Law Commission's report about the the behavior of lawyers and how it has also proposed an amendment and a law on this purpose. So that is regarding lawyers. Then next is Sabrimala, Supreme Court to hear arguments on reference plea. So Sabrimala Shrine we have discussed in culture in June 2016 first part also. So this is also important from culture perspective and also from the perspective of present case before the Supreme Court. So this is on the restriction on women aged between 10 and 50 years from entering into the Sabrimala temple in Kerala. So this is being protested against, that it is violating the right to equality that is provided to women under the constitution, that you cannot discriminate on the basis of gender. So this is, they say it is a religious denomination as such, so like a temple. So does it have the fundamental right to restrict women from entering it? So right to freedom of religion is also there. So how this right to equality and freedom of religion should be balanced. So these hearings are taking place before the Supreme Court now. Lawyers have even asked the Supreme Court to consider the wishes of the DT itself. So DT is a Nastik Brahmachari. So the presiding DT does not want females as such. So coming near them. So that wishes also should be considered is what is being argued as such. So this is the case before the Supreme Court. Then next is OROP, Supreme Court notice to government on revision. So the Supreme Court has now sought the centre's response on a plea to implement OROP, one rank, one pension, which has been recommended by Koshyari Committee. So this should be on an automatic annual revision as such. So current policy is of periodic review once in 5 years. So OROP has been accepted by the government, one rank, one pension, but then in future also again this lag would come. So how would that be decided? So that's what the petition is saying, that it should be done automatically on an annual revision basis. So this is the point. The 2014 announcement by which revision in pensions was to automatically pass on to past pensioners on an annual basis is the basis on which the petition is also filed. So this is regarding OROP. So one rank, one pension, you should know about this whole issue. It means the pension which you receive. So on retirement, you start receiving pension, and in the soldiers, they retire quite early. So then they start receiving pension based on the last salary which they drew. So this pension at whatever rank they desired is not the same as the pension which the same rank official would receive who has retired later. Means after 10 years, they'll continue receiving pension. But after 10 years, a recently retired person at the same rank, soldier, would be receiving a much higher pension from that time onwards. But they would be receiving pension at that lower rate only. So this lag which is there. So one rank, one pension should be there. Means revision of pension should be taking place for old soldiers also who have retired. So this OROP has been a demand of the military veterans for long. So finally, because what is the problem? It will be a huge cost on the exchequer, but present government has brought in that. But the petition is saying that it should be done automatically. And how this lag comes? Because of pay commission's recommendation. So with every pay commission, the salary is revised, because of which, of course, the pension would also increase. So bringing in parity between old and new retirees, pensioners, is what is being sought in this. So this has been provided now. OROP. Then next, so Arunachal Pradesh issue also we have discussed as such too. So Constitutional Bench of the Supreme Court has unanimously quashed the Arunachal Pradesh governor's decision to advance the assembly session from Jan 2016 to December 2015. So this finally it resulted in the declaration of President's rule as such on January 26 also. So now the Constitutional Bench has directed that the status quo should be brought again. What was there on December 15 means the BJP propped rebel government, Congress rebels who had joined that government has been fallen now. That was Kaliko Pul, who was a former Congress member, then he has joined finally BJP and formed the government. He was the chief minister appointed. So his government fell because of this Constitutional Bench Supreme Court's order. Then the Congress government came back to power, but of course Congress did not have, Nabam Tuki was the one who was in power. Congress chief minister was in power. He was brought back, but of course they did not have the majority. Then eventually they fell. The BJP government again, BJP formed, assisted by the BJP. It was the Congress rebels who joined and the government was formed. So the constitutionality of the governor's decision to override the authority of the assembly speaker and advance the assembly session was the point on which the constitutional bench had given its judgment that this cannot take place. It means governor is the representative of the center. So speaker will decide. And how the speaker has decided, how can the governor advance the assembly session? So this was questioned. Then the next is speaker facing the acts can't disqualify MLAs, says Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court has said because speaker has the right to decide on disqualification of MLAs under the 10th schedule of the constitution. Other disqualifications are decided by the president, but disqualification on grounds of defection under the 10th schedule, when they shift political parties, that is decided by the speaker. So he can disqualify MLAs on these grounds. So, but the Supreme Court has now said that if he himself is facing the prospect of removal, so his removal will also be decided by the assembly, the MLAs in the state level. So if he himself is having this petition, removal prospect as such, so then he should not use his position and choose to disqualify MLAs. That would alter the compensation of the House in his favor. So he should refrain from such actions. So this again is with respect to Arunachal Pradesh crisis only, that the speaker's right to disqualify MLAs on grounds of defection has been questioned. So this was the whole story, Arunachal crisis. We have discussed this quite often. You can go through it. So it is not very much important to know all the details of what went on. But of course, since the Supreme Court is ruling on the matter, you should at least know the gist of it. The next is Supreme Court stands by Lodha panel report to revamp cricket. So Supreme Court has upheld this, already has undertaken. The Lodha committee recommendations have been put into effect too. The board of administrators have also been appointed for looking into the affairs of the BCCI. The BCCI director, Mr. Thakur, Anurag Thakur, has also been removed from the post as such. So this is the news in July 2016, when Supreme Court upheld almost all the recommendations of the RM Lodha committee to overhaul the cricket administration. So recommendations were submitted in December 2015, and in July 2016 almost all recommendations were accepted. So one state, one vote, age limit for cricket administrators fixed at 70 years, keeping government ministers and bureaucrats out, including a nominee of CAG office as such, and also the 3-year term with a cooling off period between 2 successive terms for the post of the members here. So this is the major recommendations as such. Also, the panel's recommendation for overhauling the existing committee of the BCCI on the ground that they do not have clearly defined terms of reference. So Lodha panel wanted the present committee of BCCI also been changed. So that has also been done presently now. That's what we spoke of, that the president has also been removed. And also the job of supervising the transition to the Lodha committee will be handed over. So it hands over the job of supervising the transition as such of this, which would take place, changes in the BCCI, that would be overseen by Lodha committee itself. Also, court restrained from passing any direction to include the BCCI under the RTI Act. So this was also a proposal under the Lodha committee. It has also asked to legalize betting. So on legalizing betting, on bringing BCCI under RTI, the court has not passed any order. Other recommendations as such have been accepted. So these are the recommendations. The next is Supreme Court rejects consecutive life terms, says it's an anomaly. So means life terms, consecutive life sentences are given. So means one life sentence has been given, and then on that, top of that, another life sentence is given. So when multiple life sentences are given, it is expected that after completing one life sentence, which may be of 15 years, another life sentence then starts. So there is no point of having this consecutive life sentence. So like any human being, a convict too has only one life. He cannot serve consecutive sentences of life imprisonment. That's what the Supreme Court order is. Then next is Apex Court refuses plea for governor's rule in Jammu and Kashmir. So petition was filed to bring in governor's rule in Jammu and Kashmir, but the Supreme Court refused to entertain such a plea, saying that we cannot intervene in such a matter. It's a difficult situation. It changes every few hours. We cannot manage it judicially. So this was a direction sought that governor's rule under section 92 of the Constitution of Jammu and Kashmir, because of failure of constitutional machinery in the state, should be brought in. So this was when the Jammu and Kashmir crisis also began and the protests began. in July 2016. So Supreme Court asks Army to regularize potters. So this is a Supreme Court's direction to the government that local potters, so they should be regularized. So these are the potters who function in with the military. So they accompany soldiers to hostile heights. So their children should also be welcomed into army schools. So should also be made provisions for them, should also be made. Regularization with all benefits should be there for all those who have completed 10 years in service of the army. So this is a suggestion as such, that at least for those who have completed 10 years, provisions of regularization should be made. So this is the Supreme Court's direction to the government. Next is Supreme Court allows rape victim to abort 24-week fetus. So under the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act of 1971, it is mandated that abortion after pregnancy crosses 20 weeks is not allowed except in some exceptional situations. So here in case of a rape victim, it has been allowed. Otherwise, if it is a threat to the life of the child, the fetus, or to the mother, then it is allowed. Next in governance, the first news item is Ministry of Home Affairs opposes visa-free entry. So this is the viewpoint of MHA, which has been informed to the PMO, Prime Minister's Office, that visa-free entry to business visitors and tourists from 18 key countries including China should not be there. So visa can easily be acquired. E-tourist visa on arrival has also been provided. So this can be granted within 48 hours of application being received. Even normal tourist visas are valid for 6 months. They are issued within 3 days. So why visa-free entry should be provided for business visitors or tourist visas is being questioned. So this is the point. Then next is Center begins stake sale in 51 firms. So this is the initiative taken by the government now. So it has invited merchant bankers to help it sell minority stakes in 51 companies. So these include RIL, ICICI Bank. So minority stake is there in these. So a specified undertaking of UTI. So this is also there. So this was formed in 2003 as an offshoot of erstwhile UTI, Unit Trust of India. So this has investments in these 51 listed companies, listed and unlisted companies. So this stake sale would be done now. So government has set up an ambitious disinvestment target to it wants to accrue 56,500 crores from disinvestment in 2016-17. So minority stakes are also being sold now. Next is asylum seekers can own property. So this Union Cabinet has approved the proposal for extending several benefits to persecuted minorities from Pakistan, Afghanistan and Bangladesh living in India on long-term visas. So they are asylum seekers as such. So they can now take up self-employment, buy property, open bank accounts, even get driving license, PAN card and Aadhaar. So this is for the minorities, persecuted minorities. So these don't include Muslims, they include Hindus because these are Muslim majority countries. So Hindus, Sikhs, Buddhists, Jains, Parsis and Christian communities, they would be given these benefits. Also the citizenship rules will be amended to get citizenship for such persons as well. So that's on agenda and that has been done. The next is NGOs have to register with Niti Aayog for grants. So as the government is tightening its scrutiny on NGOs and especially on their financial dealings, the center has made obtaining unique identification numbers for them compulsory and they should register themselves on the Niti Aayog portal. So the details of Aadhaar and PAN numbers of all their trustees and office bearers have to be brought in here. It is mandatory for them to apply for grants from ministry. So they have to register on Niti Aayog portal. Also NGOs receiving government funds in excess of 1 crore and those handling day-to-day operations of theirs, they would be treated as public servants under Lokpal and Lokayukta Act of 2013. So we just saw above too that NGOs have also come. Even in case of foreign funding, if they receive 10 lakh a year or more, then they would be coming within the ambit of Lokpal and Lokayukta Act also. Also, they will be subject to rules and regulations for government officials under Prevention of Corruption Act. So this has also been announced. The next is new IT ministry to have say over UIDAI and NIC. So this is Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. So this new ministry has been carved out. So a mega role has been carved out for this ministry now. That is that it will have complete jurisdiction over UIDAI and National Informatics Center. So this is the announcement. The next is blow to India as arbitration tribunal rules against Antariksh. So this is the Permanent Court of Arbitration Tribunal in The Hague. it has ruled against Antriksh Corporation, which is the commercial arm of ISRO. So this case was on dealing with Devas Corporation, which Antriksh had. So the sharing of spectrum on satellites deal, which was done with Devas, so they have to, that was scrapped. So because of that, now Antriksh will have to provide $1 billion compensation to Devas as per the ruling of Permanent Court of Arbitration. So this was the second international tribunal which has ruled in favor of Devas on the cancellation of Devas Antriksh deal. So they said Devas was denied commercial use of S-band spectrum later because it was seen that it was through the internal setting that this deal was undertaken. But then Devas said that once the deal has been finalized, then how can you scrap it? So these are international rulings on that. Then next is on government appointments. So now the process to select the director of CBI, presently of course he has already been appointed. So this has been initiated in this news. So CBI director has a fixed tenure of 2 years, and under the Lokpal Act, a selection committee which should appoint CBI director is headed by Prime Minister, and it comprises of the leader of the single largest opposition party, CJI or Supreme Court. So for CBI director, that's what single largest opposition party leader is taken. And right now the point on Lokpal dispute is that leader of the opposition should be there. So that they want to amend and change it to leader of the single largest opposition party. So it's already there for CBI post. Then Chief Justice of India or a Supreme Court judge nominated by him as a member. So they will appoint the CBI director. But before the selection panel, the names approves the names of candidates have to be recommended by another panel. So a panel which would recommend names for the CBI director to this selection committee. It comprises of CVC, vigilance commissioners, home secretary and secretary, coordination and public grievances at the cabinet secretariat. So these will give the names, forward the names to the selection committee. Then Ashok Patnaik is NADGRID chief. So NADGRID was also a body neglected for long. We have seen it's a centralized agency which stores sensitive personal information on citizens from almost 24 agencies with respect to counter-terror operations. So all these information which is there, sensitive personal information, it is stored. This is a national grid for counter-terror activities which has been established. So this was also established post the Mumbai terror attacks, but the present government, there was neglect as such on this part. Finally now the IB officer, serving IB officer Ashok Patnaik has been appointed as the CEO of NADGRID. So this appointment also took place. Then independent bodies, the first one is regarding CAG. CAG moots the possibility of auditing RBI. So CAG, Shashikant Sharma, he has said there is a need to consider whether financial regulators such as RBI and SEBI also they should be audited or not. So there are growing incidences of financial frauds. So that is why it says that India, we CAG as such, we do not audit the RBI. Whose audit? Actually, RBI auditors are appointed by the central government under the provisions of the RBI Act. CAG conducts audits of other financial sector regulators like SEBI, IRDA and PFRDA, but does not conduct performance audits as such. So here it has been sought that since there are many frauds as such, NPAs in banks as such, so should the CAG be involved or not? So this is a point put forth now. So possibility of auditing RBI. Then next is CAG audit nails centre's claim on LPG subsidy saving. So central government had claimed that it had saved up to 22,000 crore in 2014-15 and 15-16 because of its two-pronged approach on LPG subsidy. One was PEHL, direct benefit transfer scheme, which was launched in November 2014, and the Give It Up campaign, in which consumers had to voluntarily give up their subsidies for LPG. So the audit has now said that the savings from people and voluntary giving up subsidy and direct benefit transfer is less than 2,000 crore. The remaining savings is actually because of the dramatic fall in prices of LPG that India annually imports. So oil prices were low, so LPG prices went low. That is why the savings have come up. Savings are there, but not because of this, has been pointed out by CAG now. So Prime Minister had announced this on 15th August 2015 from the ramparts of the Red Fort that such savings have been made by us. So that has been dented by the CAG audit now. Next is CAG reps Navy on aircraft carriers jets. So the Navy has also come under the scrutiny of CAG. So it has spoken about repeated delays in construction of first indigenous aircraft carrier, which has been done in Kochi, and also the underperformance of MiG-29K fighter jets, which are to operate from it also. So it speaks of INS Vikramaditya. So this is the only aircraft carrier which the Navy has presently in service. INS Virat was likely to be decommissioned. We know it has already been decommissioned. AP government also proposed that a museum should be set up here. Central government rejected it. So we have discussed INS Virat. It has been decommissioned. So INS Vikramaditya is the sole serving aircraft carrier, which was earlier under the UK government. Then it has been brought from there. So this has taken place. So now the question is that the indigenous aircraft carrier, if the timeline of delivery is continuously shifted and delayed, it would adversely affect the naval capabilities. So that is highlighted. And second point highlighted in the CAG report is regarding the MiG-29K carrier-based fighters which are brought from Russia. So they are there on to be, the INS Vikramaditya also would be equipped with it, and also the indigenous aircraft carrier. So the CAG report says that MiG-29K, this is an aircraft for the carrier, continues to face operational deficiencies due to defects in engines, airframe, and fly-by-wire system. So this point is also highlighted by the government. So that is it. Remaining we'll discuss in the next video. Thank you.